happening. And with me is one of the paragons of justice, Counsel Simon Peter Kinobe, the president of Uganda Law Society. Thank you for joining us and a very good morning.
Thank you for having me.
Let's begin with Sabiti's question. The security of your advocates and the version that police is giving.
Well, of course, we all received concerns that Komakech Kilama armed men had tried to enter his house in vain. The objective thereof is not known. Immediately called the CDF and the Inspector General of Police to find out whether this was true and what was happening. They denied having any of their people involved in that. And so I have put my ear to the ground. I've asked people to give me feelers on whether actually police was involved. And we'll know, because whatever happens in this country comes to light. That as it may be, we have also asked that they ensure that our advocate is safe and that our advocate is not intimidated. And to that end, I think they are willing to provide security. I've called Komakech to see if he's willing to take that security, and he's a little reluctant for obvious reasons, because he's doing a case against...
Does this have a reflection on the current state of affairs for the lawyers who are representing Honorable Chagulanyi and the others?
I think this is what we need to know as lawyers. That I don't know whether I can answer yes or no to that question, because we need to know if it's really police or government, and that's what we're trying to establish. But this is what I know and what I tell the public and what I tell lawyers. One is that lawyers should never at any one time be intimidated for doing their work. Lawyers should not be arrested. We've had police arrest lawyers for doing their work meticulously, and I've come out to condemn that. But also we've on several occasions advised that if that happens again, we'll lay down our tools and call upon the public to support us in a demonstration to detest that very act. That as it may be, also as lawyers, we need to be very guarded and know that the work we do at times is not welcomed by many people, especially those that are on the losing side. We had a lawyer that was attacked by an acid person, Tebusweke. I mean, really, he was attacked for doing a job so good. So we need to also be cautious and very security cautious as advocates.
Are times this awkward that you need to watch your backs as lawyers?
I think we need to. We need to. Both from intimidation, from the force. But we call upon the public to respect the rights of lawyers. We speak for the voiceless. We are conduits of justice. And therefore, we should never at any one time come into dispute. We should never be attacked. We had police recently arrest one of our colleagues for writing a letter to police to investigate an alleged death. I mean, even though there was no murder, when a lawyer writes to you and say, investigate, why do you arrest them? And I had issues with the IGP at the time, and I raised it, of course, with a lot of bitterness. Lawyers should never be attacked for doing their job. Lawyers should actually be protected for doing their jobs.
Well, the current times look a little sensitive. In the wake of the ugly incidents that rocked Arua the other day, you've written a series of statements as Uganda Law Society, and just the other day you had an extraordinary General Assembly. Could you just feed us on what actually transpired and some of the key resolutions?
Well, we of course wrote several statements, and one of our members, actually one of our committees, the Female Lawyers Committee, called for an EGM. The concern was that citizens were being tortured, citizens were being assaulted by our men in uniform. We all saw what happened in Mitiana, where some useless police officers shot at a commuter taxi and killed 2 people. I'm told one beautiful lady from Chambogo University died yesterday. And these acts are unacceptable. We saw our men in uniform flog people in town in Kampala today. There were even more videos uploading on with men in uniform, soldiers beating up traders in town. There is another of a journalist being beaten. We've seen one of a security and army officer using pliers to using pliers on human beings. And this is unacceptable. This is very unacceptable. And the beauty is that all those in authority, including the CDF, because I've had chats with the CDF and IGP, have condemned these acts and have undertaken to bring these people to book. My problem is, yesterday I saw a tweet going around, and I'm going to call the CDF to find out if it is true, that those who are involved in flogging citizens have been sentenced to severe caution. What the hell is severe caution? So we need to be very serious about these acts, about these things that are happening. Yeah. But as Uganda Law Society, we had an EGM, and at the EGM we passed a few resolutions. One of the resolutions was that we need a report on the prosecutions that have been done and the actions that have been taken against these people that violated the rights of citizens. And in the event that we don't see any action, we shall do private prosecution. And that's, I think, by the within a month, by the 28th. If we don't see any action from government to prosecute its people that are involved in these heinous crimes, we'll have no choice but to do private prosecution. But our private prosecution shall also involve their commanding officers, because under the Anti-Torture Act, the commanding officers are equally culpable for acts of torture. And so we'll take up private prosecution against them. Secondly, of course, we're going to set up a bar bench forum. I talked to the Chief Justice yesterday, and that is already underway. I'm also having a meeting with him. And in that regard, we're going to, we want to discuss with our people on the bench that what do we do about torture?
Apparently, yes. Uganda Law Society, among other institutions, has come under spotlight for being lopsided. In your stance on the situation, you don't seem to sympathize at all with the security agencies. You don't seem to appreciate what they're going through to curb what they call, in their sense, some bit of lawlessness. Well,
for us, whether they say we are lopsided or not, we really don't care. Ours is the legal narrative. The law prohibits the flogging of citizens, assault. It prohibits torture. You get a pair of calipers and apply it on a human being. The law does not allow it. It's not permissible. So for us, we will not give the political narrative. We'll give the legal narrative, and we are saying that those acts of torture
hugely sentimental, and you seem to be riding with the sentiments.
My brother, when they start caning you, there is no sentiment there. A cane is a cane. When they start applying pliers, when they beat you to the extent that you cannot walk and your face becomes disfigured and your hands are cut, there is no sentiment there. Torture is torture. There is no cover you can give torture. Whether you are quelling a riot, whether you are quelling a demonstration, whether you are beating somebody that pelted stones, whether you're doing what, torture is torture. There is no justification. The law does not say do not torture except when you are quelling. Do not torture except when somebody pelts a stone. No, the law is clear that torture is impermissible. So for us, we go by the law. Do you have a good case to argue laws in such turbulent times? I mean, things are bad. Times are too sensitive. Yes, and this is the actual test to the rule of law. The rule of law does not only apply when things are good. The rule of law actually should even apply more when things are bad. So this is a very good test to the perimeters of the rule of law in our country. And that's why it's embarrassing to see journalists being flogged for doing their job just because we're in bad times. You imagine, actually, when are there even good times? The rule of law is to ensure that at all times there is a constant in the exercise and application of rights. That even when a government is popular, that my rights will be respected for saying no to a popular government. That when a government is unpopular, my rights will be respected for saying no to an unpopular government. So at all times, the only constant thing in life should be the law.
Mr. President, it's not the first time that Uganda Law Society has stood up to the authorities in the midst of a lot of bad things happening.
And it won't be the last.
We had the court siege, remember the Black Mambas when they raided court. We've had several instances, but it starts and stops there. Isn't this likely to be yet the same case?
First, you said it's not the first time we are condemning government, but we also condemn citizens, because for us we push the legal narrative. But I think one of the unique aspects this time round is we've taken active action points. For instance, if we do not see prosecution of these officers within 1 month, then we are going to have private prosecution. That is an action. We are evaluating to see if we can challenge, because members of the section in the legal fraternity believe that the court-martial is not actually a court, it's a tribunal. That all along we have been acting under the assumption that it's a court of law. But when you see the act that establishes it, Parliament had limited powers. It was for the regulation of the UPDF. So we are saying, why don't we go to court and challenge the existence of the court-martial as a court? That is an action, so it's not ending there. We have the Computer and Misuse Communication Act, Computer Misuse Act, where sections were sneaked in by our MPs that do not read, that literally take away the freedom of expression. We are challenging that. We should have filed by close of business this week. We have another petition we are filing on torture and trial of torture victims. Can you actually try a torture victim? And we have case law on those points. And thankfully, the Arua 33 have allowed us to join their case. And we are joining it specifically for that concept that when you torture a person, you cannot try them. And so we're not stopping at statements. We are actually acting and we are moving.
So you find the trial of the 33 unsettling?
In as far as they were tortured, yes. In as far as they were tortured. You know, when you bring a person to trial, there are some precinct aspects we need to follow that make the trial transparent but also permissible. Now, when you torture and cane somebody into confession, torture somebody and produce them based on evidence that may be challengeable, where is the chain, the causation of evidence, the chain of evidence? But that's for the criminal experts. I don't do a lot of criminal law. But for us, we are interested in the aspect of torture. That when you come and beat Simon, can you try him thereafter? Because the law says do not torture. And there is a reason the law says do not torture. And we have those provisions in law so built and based on our history. So should such a person be tried? And there is case law that says that you shouldn't. So we want to make court alive to some of those precedents that have been set that a tortured victim cannot be tried.
Well, what do you make of the intriguing twists and turns that have characterized this case? Initially it was stone throwing, then it came to murder. In a way, there was
possession of firearms.
Possession of firearms, then terrorism, and now it's treason.
You know, this is, I think, the problem. Arua happened so fast. And because Arua happened so fast, many people were not thinking about the actions they were taking. And so the whole process, and I guess the trial process, lost credence. For instance, when you search a hotel room and say you recovered guns, and then the people who searched were SFG, but also those people who searched beat up the person that was arrested. Now, how do you go to try and say we searched? Yes, we beat up this person and also recovered this gun. Or we tortured this person and found this gun. So I think so many things were done the wrong way. And as a result of that, the prosecution in itself has been weakened. But again, I cannot discuss beyond that because it's a matter before court. But those are the things that the DPP needs to seriously think about. Then who sanctioned the first charges? Who sanctioned those that are later? Because I see the DPP take over charges later. The ones in the court martial are withdrawn, then the ones in the high court are reinstated. So I think there was a problem with the way all this was done. Anybody watching, even those that are not lawyers, will tell you that the charges may not be sustainable because of the causation, rather the chain of events, the chain of evidence, the chain of arrests, the way it was done and the manner in which it was done.
Are you aware of a team of foreign lawyers who've been enlisted to support this case?
I'm not aware.
Is there any procedure, and would Uganda Law
Yes.
Society be maybe part of clearing these lawyers to ensure that maybe
the reason I say I'm not aware is there is a procedure. When you're not an advocate in Uganda, there is a procedure for you to get a temporary practicing certificate for purposes of particular instructions. And to the best of my knowledge, being a member of Law Council, I have not seen any such applications. So I'm not aware. Perhaps they are here as observers, as any other observer, but not as advocates.
Is this a case that would elicit global attention in terms of law and justice?
Well, yes, I think yes, because you have about 5 MPs that were arrested. You have Kassiano Wadri, you have Gerard Karuhanga, you have Muiru Paul, you have
Kassiano.
Yes, Kassiano I mentioned, you have Bobby Wine. You have, there is one, we don't know whether I'm told he's under arrest. The president says he escaped, so but he's under arrest, Zake. Now, when you have 5 members of parliament who went to look for votes, and I'm not saying they are innocent of any wrongdoing. They may be guilty of some wrongdoing, but the security forces that should have been much more restrained used excessive force. Now, that is something that I think should attract international
What is measurable
attention.
force and what is strong force?
Now, good.
Or rather excessive.
Good you ask. I'm going to talk about it like a peasant and not like a lawyer. A person throws a stone at you. You respond with a gunshot that eventually kills one person. Now, do you have to be a lawyer for you to know that that's not reasonable force? You don't have to be a lawyer. Those are issues of fact.
Someone has a stone, I have a bullet.
Yes, but you see, you're supposed to there are perimeters within which you're supposed to exercise force. You do not start shooting at people. I saw a video of somebody that was shooting in an arcade. People were standing out and I think booing these army men. And so this man cocks a gun and shoots in an arcade. Now, if that gun shot at an innocent person, is that reasonable force? For a person who boos you, Simon, you get a gun and shoot because you have a gun. He has a mouth, you have a gun. So the law says that the use of excessive force is unacceptable. And I think that is part of what happened in Arua. And without condoning the acts of the arrested, the 33, I think our security forces, our men in uniform, used unnecessary excessive force.
Have you, to an extent, examined the president's writings, where he addresses countrymen, and the Bazukulu, the details therein, and what do they speak to?
Well, I have looked at his statements, and the only statement to me that I think came out that made ample sense is the one where he talks about condoning torture of prisoners, or rather condemning the torture of prisoners, and saying that that is unacceptable. I like that he came out to clarify that. All the others, I have seen the one where he's giving a narrative of the incidents in Arua, where he says my car, a stone was pelted at my car, and so it was their fault, etc. But he falls short of acknowledging the fact that there was torture. And you see, again, as I say, with all due respect, head of state should never be complacent on issues relating to torture. That is a no-go area. And it doesn't matter what political affiliation you belong to. It does not matter what age group you are in. Torture should never be condoned. And more so for a person who went to the bush to fight the same impunity that we are talking against. So I like his statement when he came out outrightly and said the torture of prisoners is unacceptable. And for me, I commend him. I commend him for that.
Just when I would expect lawyers to come out and start interrogating that narrative of a stone and which car was hit, you seem to be losing focus on that and focusing on other things.
I don't think we have lost focus on that. You know, for us, we believe in forum. This is not a forum for discussion on whether the car was hit or not, and that's the interesting thing. I want to see how the state is going to lead that evidence, because whether we discuss it here or not is inconsequential. But let them bring it to court and we see what narrative they are going to give. And I think some of the things that will be said at trial will be laughable on both sides. But so that is the forum to discuss on whether there was a stone pelted,
the mystery stone,
or the mystery stone, yes, or not, whether there was. So all those issues are going to be brought up at trial. And I'm both excited but also pity the prosecutor in that particular case, because there is some evidence that will be interesting to read. But let me leave it to that. I do not want to make my conclusions here.
Yeah, but again, when you look at the legal processes, they kicked off with the court.
I think it's a positive gain. It's a good gesture by government. And
so that legitimizes the court martial?
No, it does not. It does not. That's why we said we are still challenging, and I was still making my point. I think it's a good gesture. It's a good move by government and by the DPP. But again, to avoid such issues, because we have people like Kitata, he'd become a nuisance, but he's also a citizen and has rights. We have...
and you're not speaking for him. That's the unfairness that you're trading.
But I'm doing that here.
Okay.
So, you have so many civilians that are before the General Court Martial, and we believe that that court is not for trial of civilians. That's why we're going to court. You imagine, the chair of the General Court Martial, my friend Guti, also has a very limited understanding of law. When a lawyer comes and say the the accused cannot understand, is not in a position to understand the charges brought before him, and then you say, if he does not talk, I will sentence him for contempt of court. Now, you're trying a civilian under those circumstances, and we believe it's unacceptable. You need to be put before a system that allows for the production of evidence without intimidation.
Okay, is there a global practice on court martials?
Yes, there is.
Could Uganda's case be unique?
I think it is. I think it is. In 99% of the case studies on court martials is that the court martial is a disciplinary tribunal for men in uniform. Now, United States made an exception and said, okay, we'll also try some of the terrorists, but also there is a category of which terrorists can be tried under the court martial. In Uganda, if you are found in possession of a firearm, they take you for a court martial. If they find you, you know, and that's the problem, because you see the very nature of servicemen is commands. So if Simon Kagwanjala is my political opponent, how do I neutralize him? I can neutralize him by taking him to the general court martial where I can give instructions. And this may not be the case, by the way, but that is the perception. Because you see, in justice, we say justice should not only be done, but should be seen to be done. For purposes of the court martial, the general outcry is we don't see justice being done. So it's an issue of perception. We don't feel comfortable having civilians tried in a court where instructions are given.
I'm afraid I have to hold you here because as we speak, the High Court is starting now to hear the application for bail of the 33 Arua suspects. So we want to take you to court now for the proceedings.
Check our unit. Court is started. Okay.